Hello viewers, welcome to this video, and in this video we will be going through creating a load balancer, instance group and instance template. And in the previous video we saw some of the concepts around this topic here from my notes. So I hope you watched my previous video. If not, please go ahead and watch that video before watching this one. So let's dive straight into our console here. So I've logged into my Google Cloud Console using the Just Me and Open Source channel, and if I go back here, first thing we will do is we will be creating the instance, and then we will create an image from it, and then instance template, instance group, and then load balancer. Okay, let's go ahead and do everything. Go to Compute Engine, VM instances, create, and let's call it web server. I'm gonna create it in Europe. Okay, but wait a minute. So before doing all these, I'm going to create a firewall rule to allow access to port 80. So I'm going to do firewall rules. So before creating the instance, we need to create firewall rules. Either we can create the firewall rules when creating the instance, or we can directly create the firewall rules before creating the instances. So I prefer to create the firewall rules. So as you can see here, there is no firewall rules at the moment. It's just one rule that allows SSH. I'm going to create another firewall rule and call it allow HTTP web service, or allow HTTP. That's more than enough. Give it a name. Allow HTTP access to the web server. Alright, logs, network, I'm going to choose VPC1, so that's the only network that I've got. And direction is ingress, match, allow, target. So I'm going to specify the target. So this firewall rule applies only to the instances that has this tag attached to it. So I'm going to call this tag web server. Okay, IP range, and I'm gonna say 0.0.0.0/0, and protocol is TCP port 80. Okay, creating firewall rule. So that's done, and we can now go to instances, create. I think that's done. Yep, firewall rule allow HTTP is done. And now let's create an instance, web server. Gonna choose Europe West 2. I'm not worried about choosing a zone here. Machine type F1 micro. That's okay. And image, let's leave that as Debian image, and everything is looking good. And I'm gonna click here. Under networking, I'm gonna set the network tag web server. So because this instance is going to be tagged with the tag web server, the firewall rule that we created will be applied to this instance. Okay, so I think that's all I need. Networking, and we've chosen VPC1 because that's the only network that we have got. Create. Okay, so the instance is getting created. Once the instance is running, we SSH into it and set up Apache web server and create a simple index.html page. Okay, so server is running. I'm going to click SSH. Alright, logged into the machine. I'm going to, sorry about that. I just closed it accidentally. Let's log in again. Wait for it. Alright, logged into the machine. I'm gonna become root user and do apt install -y Apache 2. So once that's done, we will create a sample index.html page. Alright, so that's done, and I'm gonna say echo just me and open source. I'm gonna pipe that to var www.html index.html, and make sure the service is enabled. Systemctl enable --now Apache 2. Okay, that's done, and now we can check whether the service is actually running. Systemctl status Apache 2. Yep, that's running, and I'm also going to install a package called W3M, which is a terminal-based browser that we can use for our testing. And if I do W3M localhost, just me and open source, that's working fine. Alright, so I'm going to exit out of the shell and back in here. So that's the public IP address, and we should be able to access this IP address from my machine here. I'm going to copy that and open. Alright, so I can see here just me and open source, and I'm able to browse it through the external IP address. So our web server is configured and it's running fine. So now I'm going to go to the images. So that's because of the firewall rule that we created. We attached a tag to this machine, and we've created the firewall rule specifying the tag. So the firewall rule applies to this virtual machine. So I'm going to go to the images here. So it's not machine images, it's just images. I'm going to create an image and give it a name, web server image, and the source is disk, and I'm going to choose web server, and I'm going to say regional because my disk and the image are all going to stay in the same region. So I'm going to say regional Europe West to London. That's fine, and that's all needed, and I'm going to click create. Make sure all the information is correct and you've completed all the required field. Okay, what is it that I missed? The disk is attached to a running instance. To create an image, you need to stop the instance first or select keep instance running. Okay, so as we are not doing much with that instance, it's okay to create an image from the disk while the machine is running. But if your machine is under high load or it's actively used, then it's advisable to it's good to shut down your machine before taking the image of your disk. Okay, so let's go ahead and create. I'm not worried about that because our machine is simply idle. All right, refresh. So we should have our image created. It will take a while. It might take about 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I'm going to pause the video and come back when it's ready. Yep, the image has been created. Sorry, it didn't take about 5 or 10 minutes. It only take less than a minute. Okay, so now we have our image ready. I can go to the VM instance, and I don't need this instance anymore. I can click on that instance and delete it. So once I delete, the disk associated with that VM will also be gone. So that's the disk that's attached to that VM, and that will be gone. Okay, so now we've created the instance, we've created the image out of it, and currently we are deleting this instance because we don't need it. And now let's go ahead and create our instance template. Okay, so instance template, create instance template, and give it a name, web server template. Right, choose the machine type F1 micro, and now you need to change the boot disk and choose the image, custom image, and it shows the project that we are currently in, just me testing. If it's on a different project, you can choose the project that you've where you've got your image. Web server image that we created, select. So this template that we are creating is based on the image that we created earlier. So that's done. And one more thing, don't forget to attach the network tag here. Go to the networking, and the network is VPC1 because I've got just one VPC, and subnet is fine. Network tag is web server. Create. So that's our instance template. Next we can go ahead and create our instance group. Okay, so if we go to VM instances, yep, the one that we created is now gone. Instance template, that's there. Now if I go to instance group, you're going to create a new instance group and do some auto scaling thing. I'm going to call it web server instance group. Single zone, multiple zone, so I'm going to choose multiple zone because that makes your application truly highly available. And region, and I'm going to select Europe West 2. Instance template, web server template, the instance we just created. Auto scaling, cool. Auto scaling CPU utilization, I'm going to change that to 80%. Done. If you want to add additional metrics, you can add it. And I'm going to say initially start with 2 instance, and it can auto scale up to a maximum of let's say 6 instance. Okay. And next, as this is a web server, this instance group needs to know whether a particular server is healthy or not. If it finds the server unhealthy, it will try to restart another server. So that's the advantage of having it in an instance group, managed instance group. Okay, so I'm going to create a health check and specify the name for the health check, HTTP health check, and protocol is 80. So what we are doing is we are just doing a very simple health check to see whether the server is listening on port 80. If it gets any response back from port 80, then we can assume that our servers are healthy, our server is healthy. Okay, or you can choose a HTTP and you can specify the request path. For example, if you have coded to have a URL endpoint for health check or something like that, you can use the HTTP protocol. So it will do the check, it will try to visit the health check, and you can also specify the type of response that you are expecting to receive. So if it receives the response that you are expecting, then it's assumed that the server is healthy. I'm going to go with a simple TCP health check, port 80. So whenever the machine comes up, if it listens on port 80, the server is healthy. That's a very simple health check. And health criteria, so it's going to do this check every 10 seconds. And the healthy threshold is if it passes for the 2 consecutive success, if it passes 2 times consecutively, then the server is assumed healthy. And if it fails 3 times consecutively, then the server is unhealthy, and the auto scaling group will try to restart or launch another instance. Okay, so that's health check, and I think we are done. And let's create it. So now it's going to create 2 instances. So that's the starting point. We've made sure that we've specified that the minimum number of instances in this instance group should be 2, and then it can auto scale based on the CPU utilization, which we set to 80%. All right, so if I go to VM instance, there's nothing created, and instance group, you can see currently 0, and it's trying to create 2 instances. All right, so once the instance group is created, we can go ahead and create our load balancer, the interesting stuff. Okay, VM instance, still not created. Instance group, refresh. Right, let me pause the video and come back when the instances are created. Alright, so it has launched 2 instances, but it's still waiting for them to become healthy. So if you go into the VM instances, you can see the 2 VMs, the initial 2 VMs, instance group, and if I click on the instance group, it's healthy. Okay, cool. So it found the servers are all healthy. Go back to instance group. Alright, so everything is green. So now we are good to create our load balancer. So we've done this bit, we've done the instance group, and we haven't created the second instance group. That's fine, but it's going to be the same process. And now we are going to create the load balancer. On the sidebar here, if you scroll down to network services, there you will have the load balancing. Okay, so create a load balancer. A HTTPS load balancing, TCP load balancing, or a UDP load balancing. We definitely want HTTP load balancing. It operates on layer 7. TCP load balancing operates on layer 4. So let's go with the HTTP load balancing. Start configuration. So you need to choose whether it's going to be an internet load balancer, internet facing load balancer, or internal load balancer. So it's definitely an internet facing one. From internet to my VMs. Click continue. And let's give this a name, web server load balancer. So we need to do some backend configuration, front-end configuration, so on. So backend configuration is where you specify which instance group to connect to. So let's click backend configuration and backend services, create a backend service, and name web server backend. Alright, so backend type is going to be instance group, and you can choose your instance group here. We've only got one instance group. Port 80, balancing mode is utilization or rate. You can specify the way the load balancer sends traffic to your instance group. So that's the option here, balancing mode, whether it's based on certain utilization or based on the rate requests per second. So within this instance group, you've got the number of web servers running within this instance group, right? So we've specified to start with 2 instances and then auto scale up to maximum of 8 instances. So within this instance, the load balancing will happen based on the option we select here, whether based on utilization or based on the rate. If I specify rate, I can specify, say, 50 requests per second. So based on the rate, each of the instance in this instance group can take up to a maximum of 50 requests per second. And if it reaches 50 requests per second, and the other instance will be, the traffic will be diverted to other instance and so on. So that's one type of balancing. The other type is utilization. Let's keep it as 80% utilization. And health check, I'm going to choose the same health check that I used for the instance group. Health check TCP port 80, enable logging, advanced configuration, session affinity, and I'm not going to do any of the advanced configuration, but if you want to do it, session affinity is something might be useful in certain cases where in normal case, when it does a round robin kind of thing, a particular request, a first request from a particular user goes to one instance, backend instance, and the second request, the following request, might go to the second instance based on how you configured it, whether round robin or active passive or something like that. But for some reason, if you want all the subsequent requests from a particular client to go to the same backend web server, that's where you need to configure session affinity. So when the first request goes to a particular VM, all subsequent requests from the same client will go to the same backend web server. Alright, so I'm going to click create. So what we've done is we've created the backend configuration. We've identified, we've hooked our load balancer to the instance group via this backend service. Host and path rule. So I'm going to keep it simple host and path rule, but if you want, you can add advanced host and path rule. For example, depending on the path that you specify, you can specify which instance group to connect to and so on. But at the moment, we've got only one backend. But if you've got another instance group, if you had specified another instance group in a different region, you would have to create another backend, and you can specify, for example, your URL slash videos, for example, goes to one backend, and slash books or slash marketing slash finance goes to a different instance group or to a different backend, so on. So let's keep it simple. And then front-end configuration, name is optional, protocol, I'm going to leave everything as it is. Done. Optional review. So that's our web server backend, and you can look at all the details here. Final chance to review everything, and click on create, and it will create the load balancer. You don't expect to access your application immediately. It might take 5 minutes to 10 minutes initially. So once this once this load balancer is created, you will have an IP address here to access your application to your web server, but it will take a while. So I'm going to pause the video and come back when it's ready. Alright, load balancer created. There's one backend. If I click on the web server link here, you can see here there's this web server instance group. That's one of the backend, and 0 of 0 healthy. So we need to wait for the instance to become healthy. Okay, and that's our IP address that we need to use. So I'm going to copy that, and if I open it, 404. So because it's not ready yet, I'm going to keep refreshing. This will take about 5 to 10 minutes. Actually, when I tested it, it took about 10 minutes. And let's wait for the instance to become healthy, and while we are waiting for it, we can go back to the load balancing, and we can look at the backends. So we've got one backend. If you click on the backend here, so this is where you will see the traffic flow actually. So we've got one backend, we've got just one backend in the EU region, one instance group. And if you've got multiple instance group, multiple backend configured for different region, for Europe, Asia, Americas, you will see the backends listed here. And depending on where the requests are coming in, you will see a nice graph here, from where the requests are coming and to which backend it's going, the traffic flow. You will be able to see all those things here. But since we've got just one backend, everything will be going to that backend. And in our web instance, in our web server instance group, we've got 2 instance, and it says 0 of 2 instance healthy. So let's wait for it. Go back to load balancing. It still says not ready. And if I go to the other one, refresh, nope, it's still not ready. Okay, let's wait for it to become ready. Alright, the backend is green. If I click on the backend, sorry, the 2 of 2 servers are healthy. Okay, that's good. And if I go to backend, click on the backend, 2 of 2 instances healthy. I think it should be fine now. If I go to the IP address of my load balancer and click refresh, error server, the server encountered temporary error. Okay, it's not available yet. Let's wait some more time. Okay, oh, it automatically refreshed. There you go. So we've got our web page. Alright, cool. I think that's all I wanted to show you in this video. Maybe if I refresh this backend, you will see the traffic flow here, I guess. Not yet. Okay, let's go here and refresh it a couple times. And here, if we go back, you should be able to see the traffic flow here, which I'm not seeing right now. Maybe if you do a lot more traffic, if you send more traffic to it, you will be able to see the traffic coming in here. Okay. Alright, anyways, if you wait here a little longer, you will be able to see the graph here. And I think that's all I wanted to show you. I didn't expect this video to take this long, but anyways, I hope you found this video useful. Please let me know if you've got any questions. I'll be happy to help, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye bye.